Let's now study the relationship between banking loans, deposits, and reserves. So far, we have studied the effects of domestic economic entities such as households, firms, and governments on the money supply in the economy. We have also seen the effects of foreign investments on money supply, the effect of interest rates on the holding period yield of foreign assets, how economic events such as increases in government deficits impacts the foreign flows, and other such direct and indirect linkages. These linkages present an opportunity for the government to influence the factors that cause demand and supply curves to shift, thereby impacting interest rates and influencing growth and inflation. For example, by increasing or decreasing tax rates or spending by the government can impact the behavior of households and firms, thereby influencing money supply, interest rates, and in turn, growth, employment, and inflation. Now, such policies are called fiscal policies, and the responsibility for implementing fiscal policies in the US are shared by the White House and the Congress. However, these fiscal policies do not impact the financial intermediaries such as banks directly. We had also mentioned that banks influence the money supply through loanable funds, which in turn impacts the interest rates in the economy, a function far too important to be left to banks to monitor and influence money supply. The government therefore forms a central bank, a banker for banks, that sets policies to regulate the influence of banks on the supply of money, along with other regulations. The central bank uses tools such as reserves, open market operations, federal fund rates, and much more that we need to understand so that when the Fed makes changes in their policy, we can decipher its impact on the markets. In 1913, the Congress created the Federal Reserve System in the United States for implementing the monetary policy. Policy changes also influence the pace of money creation, which in turn affects growth and inflation. We need to understand exactly what the central banks can or cannot control, the tool it uses, the economic data it monitors, how it implements the monetary policy, and more. Now that we understand macroeconomic indicators, how indicators affect the behaviors of economic entities causing shifts in money supply or demand, in turn causing shifts in interest rates, and in turn affecting growth and inflation, we are in a better position to understand how the central bank determines and implements its monetary policy. Factors that determine monetary policy, such as economic indicators and tools that are used to implement monetary policy, are essential to study by traders and investors. The final objective is to decipher the signals that the Federal Reserve Bank sends to the market about the desired levels of short-term interest rates. Understanding how the monetary policy works is key to understanding the direction of short-term interest rates. Any changes in policy can then be spotted to provide us early warning signals that interest rates are going to change, allowing us to take positions accordingly. However, we still need to build on some more foundations before we can begin to understand the central bank's monetary policy determination and implementation. When introducing banking in our fictitious economy, we had introduced the term reserves while discussing fractional reserve banking. With the invention of fractional reserve banking, the one-to-one correspondence between bank deposits and cash in vaults no longer held true, as we saw in warehouse banking. Deposits were created when loans were sanctioned or disbursed. Cash in vaults is a small percentage of deposits and now represents reserves required for servicing cash or check withdrawals. So we should look at that in more detail. In order for the central banks to influence the banking sector to impact interest rates, it needs to influence the quantity of loans created by the banking system. The question therefore beckons is how can the central banks influence loan creation by the banking system? What are the parameters of banks that can be influenced to alter their behavior. To understand this, we need to understand a bit more about how a bank functions. And let's do that by creating a bank in our fictitious economy.